Scotland, a land cloaked in shadow and stone, where the winds howl through moors and glens, whispering echoes from a time before history. Beneath its rain-soaked cliffs and moss-covered valleys lies a story carved not in ink, but in megaliths, bone and fire. Here, far beyond the myths of medieval kings and clans, lies a deeper tale, one forged in the Neolithic darkness by hands long since turned to dust. Who were the people who shaped this land before time? What compelled them to drag monoliths across wild landscapes, to carve cryptic spirals into rock, to build monuments aligned with the heavens? What truths did they seek to preserve in stone? This is a journey into the prehistoric soul of Scotland, a cinematic unearthing of secrets that refuse to be forgotten. We begin in Orkney, a remote archipelago battered by the North Sea, where the ruins of the distant past rise stark against the horizon. 5,000 years ago, this was no backwater. This was the beating heart of Neolithic Britain, a hub of culture, belief and architectural ambition that still stuns archaeologists to this day. The Ness of Brochs, uncovered only in the early 2000s, lies at the centre of a sacred triangle, flanked by the great standing stones of Stennis and the Ring of Brochs. It is a ceremonial complex of staggering complexity. Walls of sandstone rise from a carefully laid foundation, interlocking in patterns that suggest not merely shelter, but ritual. Bones of cattle, shattered pots, pigments, tools, evidence of feasting, of gatherings, of rites that may have bound together communities across the Isles. Some believe thousands travelled here, drawn by belief, by trade, by the need to witness or be witnessed. At the heart of it all, a structure known as Structure 10. Its scale rivals a cathedral, some of its stone slabs weighing over 5 tons. Its central hearth still blackened by ancient flames. The people who built it worked with a precision that defies our assumptions of the Neolithic. They laid flagstone floors, painted walls with red ochre, roofed chambers with massive stone slabs. This was not survival. This was culture. This was meaning set in stone. And just beyond, the Ring of Brochs looms in the mist. Its surviving stones, once over 60 in number, form a perfect circle nearly 104 meters in diameter. Its position, some say, mirrors the movements of the moon, the sun, the stars. Its stones, weighing several tons each, were quarried miles away, perhaps floated across water on rafts made of hide and seaweed, then dragged by rope and sheer will. Archaeologist Nick Card once asked, why here? Why this much effort? What belief system could compel an entire society to raise such stones? Whatever it was, it left behind not writing, but architecture, a message to the future written in shadow and silence. Southwest of Brochs lies Unsolved Cairn, a chambered tomb nestled in a hillside, its low entrance forcing visitors to crawl as if re-entering the womb of the earth. Inside, bones were placed together without hierarchy. Skulls, limbs, fragments all mingled. Perhaps a gesture of equality in death, perhaps something more. Nearby, pottery known as Unsolved ware was found, bowls adorned with delicate incisions, likely holding food or offerings. These weren't just containers, they were vessels of belief. Maeshowe, not far off, is a marvel of prehistoric engineering. Its corbelled stone roof remains one of the finest examples in Europe. On the winter solstice, the sun strikes its entrance tunnel and floods the inner chamber with golden light. A design so exact it could not have been coincidence. The ancestors who lay within were bathed in the final fire of the year, a rebirth of light in the darkness. Centuries later, Vikings broke into the tomb and carved runes along the walls, messages of conquest or curiosity. But even they, in their own crude way, paid tribute to a structure that had stood for 2,000 years before their arrival. Maeshowe speaks not only to those buried inside, but to us, across time, across language, across our need to find meaning in death. The Orkney of the Stone Age was a land not of savages, but of scientists, of artists, of dreamers. They looked to the stars and built monuments that still defy our understanding. The silence of their stones is not emptiness, It is an invitation to listen deeper, to look harder, to ask what we no longer know. And that, my friends, is just the beginning. Kilmartin Glen, nestled in Argyll's misty heart, its gentle slopes cradle a valley unlike any other in Britain. This landscape, silent and unassuming, holds the densest concentration of prehistoric monuments anywhere in Scotland. Over 350 ancient sites within just 6 miles, stone circles, burial cairns and something more elusive, carved whispers in stone. Here the past is not just buried, it's inscribed. At Temple Wood, twin stone circles rest beneath lichen and moss. Their alignment with the midwinter sun suggests cosmological precision. At first glance, they mirror the megaliths of Orkney, but look closer, and a different kind of story begins to unfold. Scattered throughout the glen are stones marked with abstract motifs, spirals, rings, concentric arcs, and enigmatic hollows known as cup marks, etched by hands thousands of years ago into slabs like those at Attenborough and Kilmartin. Some lie flat along ancient processional routes, others perch high, exposed to wind and rain as if meant for the sky to read. What do they mean? Were they territorial markers, celestial maps, spiritual offerings? Theories range from agricultural calendars to psychoactive shamanic art, but the truth remains veiled. What is certain is their connection to a wider world. Similar motifs appear in Ireland, Brittany, even Iberia, suggesting a vast Atlantic network of cultural exchange. Prehistoric Scotland was not isolated. It was wired into a prehistoric consciousness stretching across continents. These carvings speak of people who not only watched the stars, but perhaps believed they could speak back. Beneath the glen's surface, buried in cairns like Netherlargy South, lie the dead, often placed in stone chambers accompanied by grave goods, jet necklaces, bronze daggers, flint tools, offerings that hint at status or perhaps spiritual preparation. The dead were not hidden. They were remembered, revered, laid to rest along sightlines that connect cairn to stone circle, hilltop to hollow. This geometry of memory wasn't accidental. It was sacred cartography. The glen's sacredness deepened with the arrival of the Beaker people around 2450 BC. Named for their distinctive pottery, these newcomers brought metallurgy, individual burial rites, and genetic shifts that would echo for generations. One of the earliest Beaker burials found in Scotland is that of a young woman. Tests revealed she had journeyed from continental Europe, her bones carrying isotopes of northern origins. Her skull was found beside a finely made pot, a flint blade, and a copper awl. She wasn't just buried, she was honoured. Her presence marks a seismic cultural transition. Individual graves began replacing communal tombs. Hierarchies formed, wealth emerged, the Bronze Age was dawning. Kilmartin adapted, absorbed, and thrived. As bronze replaced stone, the glen saw an explosion in ceremonial complexity. High-status individuals were interred in massive cairns overlooking the valley. Some adorned with carvings of weapons, others with ritual scars on stone. A society once focused on shared ritual now turned toward elite power, territorial control, and monumental legacy. In 2021, at Dunshrigeg Cairn, archaeologists discovered something extraordinary. Beneath a layer of Bronze Age rubble hidden in the darkness lay 3 stones engraved with stags. Naturalistic, antlered, almost alive. The first known animal carvings of their kind in Scottish prehistory. Were they created by Beaker elites to symbolize strength, fertility, protection, or do they date back to an earlier forgotten phase of Neolithic belief? Either answer rewrites the known narrative. They were carved not to be seen but to be remembered, hidden beneath the earth, preserved in secrecy until unearthed by modern eyes. They are messages not just to the living, but to time itself. Across Kilmartin, time folds in on itself. Neolithic meets Bronze Age, stone meets metal, egalitarian ritual meets stratified power. Yet the questions remain. Why so many monuments? Why here? What drew generation after generation to carve, to build, to bury in this single glen? Perhaps it was geography, a natural amphitheatre for ritual, or geology, rich in quartz, in sound-reflecting rock, or maybe something deeper, a spiritual resonance felt but not understood, like a song with no words, only rhythm. The valley hums with mystery. Some claim it is the pulse of ancient memory. Others say it is simply stone and silence. But those who stand at Temple Wood on a fog-soaked morning, or place their hand upon the spiral at Attenborough, often feel something else, a presence, not of ghosts but of meaning. We move now toward a new epoch, one defined by walls, weapons and watchfulness. The Iron Age is approaching, and with it the rise of towers built not to worship, but to defend. The Iron Age arrived not with a sudden roar, but with a slow, grinding transformation. Bronze gave way to iron, rituals turned to fortifications, and the sacred landscape of the Neolithic became a theatre of tribal power. Scotland, once a tapestry of ritual glens and megalithic monuments, bristled with stone towers. These were not temples, they were Brochs, colossal, circular stone fortresses rising like anchors of control across the wild northern terrain. Over 500 have been identified, concentrated in the Highlands, the Western Isles and the rugged far north. In Caithness alone, more than 200 Brochs punctuate the cliffs and valleys, silent watchers of a more volatile age. Their design is unmistakable. Double-walled structures, often 10 meters high, with internal galleries and winding staircases, all built without mortar, each stone placed with precision, locked by weight and memory. At Duntelve in Glenelg, the remains of a towering Broch still rise, its walls thick as ambition, tapering inward with a clever architect's understanding of balance. How were they built? Who commanded such knowledge? These were not crude huts, they were the apex of prehistoric engineering, constructed with shared labour, tribal unity and an eye on rivals. Brochs served many functions. Homes, strongholds, status symbols. They were places to live, but also to endure. When storms lashed the coast or enemies crept through the glens, the Broch offered refuge at Nesta Broch, perched on a Caithness cliff. One imagines lookouts scanning the sea for raiders or rival clans. Defence was essential. But so was message. These towers spoke of control, of territory marked in stone. The Iron Age mind was one of networks, alliances forged, enemies watched. At Clachtal in Sutherland, a Broch collapsed in flame around 50 BC. The charred remains of barley, fishing gear and stone lamps lay preserved beneath centuries of peat and ash. This was no abandoned structure. It was lived in, fought for, possibly besieged. The fire turned it into a time capsule. Archaeologists uncovered tools, vessels and even fragments of wool yarn. People farmed, fished, spun. This was no isolated outpost, but a hub of human activity, suddenly silenced. Yet Brochs were not just bastions of isolation. They linked settlements, served as communal centres. At Gurness in Orkney, a Broch anchors an entire village. The remains of over 20 stone houses fan out from the central tower like the spokes of a wheel. Archaeologists believe it may have supported up to 200 people. Around its perimeter, fragments of Roman pottery have been discovered, terra sigillata, fine red clay ware from distant Gaul. There are also beads of Baltic amber and metal tools shaped in southern styles. This was a world in contact. Scotland's Iron Age, often portrayed as remote and savage, was anything but. It was connected, articulate, technologically bold. Metalwork flourished. An ingot mould at Gurness hints at local smelting, a community not just consuming but producing. Brochs did not stand alone. They were hubs in a wider mesh of paths and trade routes. Goods, ideas and likely languages flowed through these stone corridors. Communication was carried not just in words, but in craftsmanship, alliances and visible architecture. A broch was a monument not just to security, but to belonging. Building one required a village, a society willing to labour for a vision, to stack stone after stone under the wind's howl and the gull's cry. Tools were simple, wooden scaffolds, hammerstones, levers, but the planning was advanced. Doors faced certain directions, staircases spiralled with the sun. At Maeshowe in Shetland, the most complete broch in existence still stands almost 13 metres high. Its double walls encase hidden stairwells and chambers. Visiting it feels like entering a stone spiral, a labyrinth of purpose built to endure more than weather. Legend says Viking ships once passed it in awe, confusing it for a fortress of kings. Perhaps that's what it was, a king's tower, or at least the ambition of one. Yet not all brochs were equal. Some were grand, others humble. Some sat atop cliffs, others crouched near locks. Each responded to the needs of its builders: defence, prestige, survival. The Iron Age in Scotland was not a single story. It was a mosaic of tribes, each carving their identity in dry stone, shaped by terrain, weather and necessity. Some brochs were abandoned, others expanded. Some became the cores of later medieval farms, re-inhabited by those who saw the value in stone that already stood strong. Brochs outlived their age. Their form echoed across centuries, a symbol of what it meant to endure. The story they tell is one of resilience, not just physical but cultural. They remind us that while time may weather stone, it does not erase the hand that placed it. We are now approaching the final leg of this prehistoric journey, from sacred circles and carved spirals to fortified towers and connected villages. The arc of ancient Scotland is one of adaptation, of invention, and of silent, lasting power. But before we close, we return once more to where it all began, with the stones standing still, watching the sky. They stand in silence, as they have for millennia, weathered by time, lashed by rain, kissed by frost. Scotland's ancient stones remain unyielding, their secrets locked beneath lichen and shadow. What were they built for? Were they calendars, temples, symbols of celestial reverence? Were they declarations of power or shelters for the soul? Across Orkney, the Highlands and the misty glens of Argyll, the echoes of prehistoric life linger not in books or bones, but in the stones themselves. They are more than monuments. They are messages from a world we cannot fully reach but endlessly seek. The people who carved spirals into rock, who aligned tombs with solstices, who stacked stones into towers that scraped the sky, they understood something we may have forgotten. They built to be remembered, not as individuals but as a culture, living not for conquest but for continuity. Their world was one of rhythm, the sun's slow return, the moon's reliable pull, the seasonal dance of life and death. These ancient architects, farmers, artists and visionaries lived in communion with the land. They shaped it and were shaped by it. The valley of Kilmartin, with its ritual pathways and aligned cairns, speaks of memory as motion, a place where the dead were never far from the living, where movement through space was a movement through time. In Orkney, the Ring of Brodgar doesn't dominate the landscape, it is the landscape. Set against the distant Hoy Hills and encircled by lochs, it draws the eye and the imagination inward and outward all at once. Even now its stones seem to breathe with the wind. At Maeshowe, the solstice light still pierces the tomb's heart, as it did 5,000 winters ago, proof that even in the darkest months, these builders found meaning in light. It is no coincidence that so many of their creations endure. They built with permanence in mind. But more than that, they built with mystery. They left no written words, no manifestos, only shapes, alignments, echoes. We must interpret their legacy not through language, but through presence. Each broch, each carving, each weathered slab is a sentence in an unwritten story. A story we continue to uncover with every excavation, every survey, every hour spent beneath the rain with trowel in hand. In recent years, discoveries like the stag engravings at Duncriaig have reignited our curiosity. Naturalistic, dynamic and carved with surprising realism, they suggest that the ancient imagination was far richer than once believed. Were they depictions of hunted prey, sacred symbols or mythic spirits? Whatever their purpose, they invite a new chapter, evidence that the past is not static but fluid, waiting to be reinterpreted. Scotland's prehistoric landscape remains a puzzle. Each piece we find connects us not only to an ancient people, but to our own desire to belong, to know, to remember. When we walk through Kilmartin Glen or stand beneath the looming wall of a Broch, we are walking through layers of human thought. We are standing in the footprints of those who believed the land was sacred, that memory could be built in stone, that death was not an ending but a threshold. Perhaps that is why these sites still pull us in. They are timeless not because they resist change, but because they embrace it. They allow us to see ourselves within the long arc of history, not as outsiders but as inheritors. From the first Neolithic settlers to the Iron Age engineers, the people of prehistoric Scotland left behind no kings, no written histories, no great wars. What they left was presence, monumental presence. Structures aligned with stars, stones that cast shadows like clock hands across the earth, villages that rose and fell with tides of trade and weather. They left behind questions that will never be fully answered, and that is their final gift. They compel us to imagine, to explore, to connect. In their silence, they speak volumes. In their stillness, they endure. As I stand once more amid the standing stones of Orkney, the mist closing in, the wind rising like a chorus through time, I feel them. The hands that shaped these stones, the minds that dreamed in spirals, the hearts that beat in rhythm with the turning year, they are gone but not lost. Their memory is carved into the very bones of this land. And in the quiet moments, when the clouds break and the light returns, I almost hear them, the distant song of a people who built for forever. Subscribe to Obscura for more cinematic explorations of history's greatest mysteries.